The sun beat down upon the great rift valley, not with the warmth of life, but the fierce, unforgiving rage of red Enkai. For 5 seasons the heavens had withheld their tears. The earth, once a patchwork of emerald and ochre, was now a uniform, cracked brown. The cattle, the very heartbeat of the Maasai people, grew thin and listless, their ribs showing through dusty hides. The boma of the Enkai clan, the atmosphere was a heavy blend of fear and tired resignation. Even the youngest children knew the silence of the sky was a dangerous sound. Elder Lekwanana, the clan's revered Laban, sat beneath the single, dying acacia tree, his face a map of the land's suffering. His hands, usually busy with sacred oils or prayers, were clasped tightly, tracing the lines of age and worry. He knew this drought was a test, a deliberate withdrawal of Black Enkai's benevolence, leaving them exposed to the punishing temperament of the Red. Enkai, the sky god, was not a single entity but 2 faces of a boundless power. Black Enkai, the kind one, bearer of rain and thunder, and Red Enkai, the wrathful one, bringer of sun and famine. Lekwanana had performed every traditional prayer, offered the fattest sheep, and sung the songs of peace, yet the sky remained a burning, mocking blue. A young Moran Kito strode into the circle. His spear was planted fiercely in the dry ground, and his eyes burned with a frustration that mirrored the sun. Cato was known for his courage in the hunt, but now his energy was curdled into bitterness against the unyielding spirits. Elder Cato's voice was sharp, cutting through the heavy air. My father's herd is dying. Our patience is exhausted. We are warriors, not beggars of the sky. Lekwanana slowly lifted his head. We beg for nothing, Cato. We remember. We honor the covenant. The covenant is broken. Black Enkai has forgotten us. If Enkai has 2 natures, let us seek a god with only one, a reliable god, Cato retorted, echoing the whispers of the younger generation. This was the true danger of the Red Enkai's reign. It bred doubt, causing the people to forget the delicate balance that sustained their world. Lekwanana knew a rash action would only invite deeper wrath. The way to Black Enkai was never through force, but through perfect humility. You misunderstand the sky god, young warrior, Lekwanana said gently. The red face is not an enemy to be fought, but a lesson to be endured, and we endure until the last cow falls. Cato scoffed, turning to appeal to the other villagers, whose silent gazes were fixed on the ground. The elder stood, his tall, lean frame dominating the space. The drought has taught us to fear the sun, but it has failed to teach you to respect the cloud. Lekwanana declared that a final, sacred ritual must be performed at the place where the earth first met the sky, the summit of all Doinyo Lengai, the mountain of God. He named Kido to accompany him, a choice that stunned the young warrior and silenced his protests. You wish to see the single-natured God, Kido? Come, we will seek Enkai where the 2 natures meet. Their journey began before dawn. The dry air tasted metallic, and the ground felt hot even in the pre-morning cool. Lekwanana carried only his staff and a small gourd of pure milk, the offering intended for the very peak of the volcano. Cato carried his shield and spear, symbols of his physical strength, but Lekwanana knew these were burdens he would soon have to shed. They walked for 2 days. The landscape was sparse, the only movement the shimmering heat rising from the ground. During the walk, Lekwanana spoke little, but his silence was instructive, forcing Kido to confront the vastness of the land. Kido's frustration began to shift into a grim respect for the elder's resilience. Lekwanana walked with a pace that defied his age. On the 3rd morning, they reached the base of the Mountain of God, its peak shrouded in a strange yellowish haze. Look, Kido Lekwanana pointed up the slopes. This mountain is Enkai's altar. The fire within is the red, and the mist around its head is the promise of the black. Cato saw the rock was brittle and sharp, demanding focus and patience. It was not a warrior's climb, but a pilgrim's test. The ascent was agonizing. Kido, relying on brute strength, stumbled repeatedly on the loose scree. Lekwanana moved with graceful economy, placing each foot with intention. Conserving his strength against the punishing incline, they rested near a sparse patch of dry lichen. Cato drank his water quickly, his breathing ragged. We are chasing the sky, Elder. Is this not futile? Cato asked, his voice raw. Lekwanana looked at the mountain. We are not chasing. We are approaching. there is a great difference. He explained that black Enkai and red Enkai were interdependent. The fire of the red purified the air, making the coming of the black's rain sweeter and more sacred. Without the drought, the people would become complacent, forgetting the value of every drop, every blade of grass. The red Enkai was necessary to sharpen the collective soul, ensuring gratitude was earned, not expected. They continued the climb, the altitude making Keto's head spin. He had to set aside his spear. It became useless weight. He focused only on the elder's footsteps, trying to emulate the careful placement, the rhythm of submission to the mountain's will. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep scarlets, the true color of red Enkai, they reached a narrow ledge. They could see the entire savanna stretching beneath them, a silent, endless expanse of brown. Lekuanana motioned Keto to sit, and he began to tell the ancient legend of how Enkai first brought the cattle to the Maasai. The story was long and winding, detailing the initial struggle, the mistakes of the ancestors, and the eventual gifts. It was a story not of divine benevolence, but of divine agreement, a partnership based on respect and stewardship. Keto listened, not as a defiant warrior, but as a student, hearing the weight of history in the elder's tired voice. He realized the Boma hadn't forgotten how to pray. They had forgotten why they prayed for connection, not for commodity. They slept huddled against a cold, wind-blasted rock face. The night was vast and clear, the stars appearing sharper and colder than ever before. In the morning, they embarked on the final, treacherous path to the summit, where the earth was covered in pale, volcanic ash. The summit was a flat, circular bowl, strangely tranquil, despite the swirling hot wind. Lekuanana took the gourd of milk and placed it carefully in the center of the bowl, near a naturally occurring vent. "Now, Keto," Lekuanana said, turning to the warrior, "you must shed the final weight. We do not ask for rain, we ask for balance." Keto looked down at his shield, the thick leather and paint of his clan symbol. It was his identity. He hesitated, then unstrapped the shield and laid it beside the gourd. He was exposed, physically and spiritually. Lekuanana began the ritual, a slow, mesmerizing chant that sounded like the earth groaning. He used a mixture of sacred ochre and ash to paint symbols on Keto's exposed chest, representing the cattle, the cloud, and the mountain. The chant was a language older than the clan, a petition to the heart of the sky. It did not demand the rain. It thanked the red Enkai for the lesson of fire and invited the black Enkai to offer the lesson of water. As the chant intensified, the wind on the summit changed direction, carrying the scent of dry, cracked earth up the slope. Keto felt a sensation he had never experienced, not fear, but pure, open vulnerability. He joined the chant, his voice initially strained, then gaining strength as he surrendered his ego to the ancient rhythm. The sun rose higher, and the heat became oppressive, a tangible force pressing down on them. Red Enkai was listening. They knelt, bowing their heads until their foreheads touched the hot volcanic ash. This was the moment of complete submission. The realization that they were small figures under an infinite sky, dependent on its complexity. Lekuanana stood and raised his hands, reciting the final verse, "Alapa Ngura, black Enkai, let your darkness come." Not out of pity, but out of your infinite balance. Keto looked up. The sky, which had been a clear, scorching blue, began to shift, not rapidly, but with a deliberate, slow dignity. A haze, darker than the yellow mist of the mountain's peak, began to creep across the horizon. It was black Enkai approaching with the patience of a god who knows exactly what it takes to break the stubbornness of man. The dark clouds rolled in, heavy and dense, consuming the aggressive red of the sun. The air instantly cooled, losing its suffocating pressure. The relief was immediate, a gasp of life after a long, wearying sickness. Keto watched, mesmerized, as the great rolling thunderheads amassed directly above all Doinyo Lengai. The contrast was stunning. The mountain, source of the red Enkai's fire, was now the meeting point for the black Enkai's water. A single, enormous drop struck the gourd of milk, splashing the offering onto the hot ash. Then another. Then the sky ripped open. The rain did not fall. It descended in massive, glorious sheets, soaking their bodies instantly. Keto did not shield himself. He threw back his head and let the life-giving water wash over him, washing away the dust and the bitterness. It was cold, clean, and felt heavier than any water he had ever known. carrying the weight of the sky god's promise. Lekwinana stood, smiling, his face streaming with a mix of rain and relief. The balance is restored. Keto the elder shouted over the roar of the downpour, "Oh, the black always follows the red." They stayed on the summit until the initial fury of the storm passed, sitting in the silence of the steady, life-renewing deluge. When they descended the mountain, the paths were transformed into small, rushing streams, carrying the volcanic ash down to the plains. They saw the plains below were already turning from brown to a deep, dark mud. The promise of green was already stirring. Cato carried his shield and spear once more, but now they felt lighter, no longer symbols of defiance, but of guardianship. He understood that the true strength of a warrior was not in fighting the harshness, but in preparing for and respecting the relief. Back at the boma, the rain had arrived shortly after the summit ritual. The villagers were dancing, singing ancient songs of gratitude. The cattle, weak as they were, had lifted their heads and were drinking deeply from the sudden pools. Keto sought out his father, who simply laid a hand on his shoulder, his eyes reflecting the deep satisfaction of rain on dry ground. Keto learned that day that true faith was not the belief that Enkai would always be kind, but the unwavering acceptance that Enkai would always be whole. The red Enkai had forced them to be patient, to be frugal, and to reconnect with the core values of their tradition. The black Enkai now gave them the chance to flourish, but with the wisdom of the drought etched permanently into their souls. Lekwinana sat once more under the acacia, watching the rain fill the cracked earth. He knew this was not the end of the test. The sun would return, and with it the threat of the red Enkai. But for now the cycle was complete. The dual nature of the sky god had been honored, and the people had remembered their place. This profound story of the Maasai sky god, Enkai, reminds us that life's greatest gifts often follow its greatest hardships. If this journey into East African mythology resonated with you, show your support. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more legends from around the world.